What's up, everybody? It's George back again with Warp Charge Gaming. Excited to be here today to give you a brief summary of my first impressions of Warhammer 40,000 kill teams. First off, I just had to say it's everything that I was hoping for out the gates here. I've gotten several games in, been able to read the rule books more than once, and done a lot of cross-referencing as we played. I feel like I have a good digestion of how the gameplay operates, and it was a pretty natural transition from Warhammer 40,000, the traditional gameplay in 8th edition here, with a few minor tweaks. I'll give you a heads up of some of the differences that are the most, that stick out the most from Warhammer 40,000, and some of the similarities and the pluses. I think there's definitely a lot of benefits that are with very few downfalls in this game. One, I mean, the cost of entry is fantastic for somebody that's wanted to play Warhammer 40,000, that's wanted to get into tabletop gaming, but it's felt it's too daunting, too overwhelming. One, with the amount of options, and two, with the expense, and then with the painting. There's a lot to do to get a 2,000 point army that's competitive at that. And when you're trying to play in the competitive scene, you want to win. There's definitely kind of a chasing the dragon type feeling of constantly sticking with what's coming out next and new. The beautiful thing about kill teams is kind of an equalizing factor. While there's lots of variety to what kind of warband you might bring, and the consistency within, the financial barrier is barely there in comparison of getting a 2,000 point army painted and assembled. You're on that kind of an equal playing field with your opponents when it comes to what you can bring to the table. And it's kind of like when 8th edition was first released in its index state. I mean, sure, some were a little better than others, but it definitely feels like a balanced situation where each faction has something that makes it special and their own methodologies of success. I will say, I started out trying to play Orks for these last few games, and I found it quite the challenge. I haven't figured out how they can succeed reliably over, say, some of the others. Now, granted, I've played Elves mainly. I've played Harlequins, I've played Aeldari, and then I played Necrons. All three of those were quite exceptional. And I feel like the Orks being so close combat focused is a real challenge to get them into play. It seems like numbers should be their game. Their ability at shooting is so bad. I mean, granted, there's a ton of hit modifiers. Whether if you're obscured even by your own friendly model or enemy model, or even a piece of terrain and just a chunk of your foot, you can get -1 to hit. If you're outside of full distance, if you're outside of half range of a weapon's firing range, then it's a long shot, and that's another -1, so there's -2. If the attacking model is wounded, there's another minus to their hit. So you can stack up -2, -3 fairly easily, and then certain models, of course, have the ability to add an additional -1 to hit when obscured. For instance, like an Ork Commando or a Tau Stealth Suit. So there you can certainly get the minus modifiers going on quick. A 3+ ballistic skill is really the only reliable method of getting 4s and 5s to hit. You're going to see 6s to hit quite often, despite your faction. The Astra Militarum and the Tau being on 4+ ballistic skill. Granted, there's some reroll 1s in there and abilities to get +1 modifiers to hit. But you're going to find yourself hitting on those 5s and 6s pretty often. So, while shooting is powerful, there's a lot more modifiers to be neg to hit than there is in combat, but you got to get there, right? So the board, is in such a close proximity, a standard board being 22 by 30 on the minimum 24 by 24. Just about most of the weapons in the game are within their range capacity. Now, granted, a lot of those 18-inch weapons and 12-inch weapons, now you're needing to be 6 inches or 9 inches to be able to be a regular ballistic skill when hitting. So, there's some challenges to shooting, but it also seems very powerful. Multi-damage has a greater effect because you want your wounds that you cause your enemies to stick. You want them to die, basically. And whenever they go down to 0 wounds, they got to roll on the injury table. And if it's only single damage that they took, then they only have to roll 1 injury dice. And on a 1 through 3, they would just take a flesh wound. On a 4 through 6, they would be taken out of action, dead. So there's modifiers to even the injury table. Something that I've found pretty potent that's definitely worth keeping note of is you want to be very conscious of the proximity to having kind of a buddy system. All your models kind of want more models adjacent to them for 2 reasons. 1, when you take the injury check, and 2, when you take the shaken test at the end. If you're a wounded model, then you're going to have to see if you're unnerved and you can't do anything for the whole next round. And that's based on a leadership check with modifiers based on how many other of your warband is dead, or if your warband is broken. A broken check is taken when more than half of your warband is wounded or dead. And for every dead model, that's another modifier to the roll to see if you're unnerved and basically shaken to where you can't do anything. So if you have a model within, for every model within 2 inches of the model taking the nerve check, will give you a boost to the roll. So let's say you have 3 guys dead and 3 guys next to you, they will equal each other out and you won't have any negative modifiers. If you have 1 guy dead and 3 guys around you, you get +2 to the roll, and it's a lot more difficult to be shaken. Leadership and becoming shaken is a big deal. I found that a big challenge about the Orks is, once they start getting wounded, they're at leadership 6, it's pretty easy to fail that shaken test and end up with your warband in deep trouble there as far as not being able to do any action. And when you bring a bunch of Gretchen or the 6-up t-shirt save there, you have Orks dying left and right. So you really start to stack up a negative modifier on that nerve check. And you got to be careful. There is a specialist. The specialist abilities are quite important. I think there's roughly about 10 specialist options. And one of them, Veteran, I believe, will give you the ability to not worry about those checks. I think it's a very important specialist skill for the Orks. There's some other ways to manipulate the shaken test, but it's a different element of the game from 40k, and it's an important one that can make or break a situation. So you definitely want to be conscious of it. 1, with the proximity of other models when you have to take that nerve check. And 2, proximity of other models is important whenever you're taking a injury check, because if there is a obscurity between you and the model that did the damage to cause you injury, then you get a -1 to the roll-off. It's interesting in kill teams comparatively to 40k. There's very few moments that you're kind of rooting for a low number in traditional 40k, but in kill teams, it's definitely a back and forth on when you want a high roll and when you want a low roll. And when you reduce to 0 wounds and you take an injury check, then you must see if you're taken out of action on a 1 through 3, the lower number, you're not. If you have an obscurity between you and the attacking model that injured you, then you're going to get a -1. So if you roll a 4, it's actually a 3, and you just take a flesh wound. A flesh wound means you get to fight another day. Every flesh wound you take is a -1 modifier to your hit in both shooting and combat, so you can definitely degrade yourself. But again, you're a body still on the board getting a fight. So those are kind of the most interesting flavors that are something to kind of ingrain into your philosophies. Another thing that's really a trip is the movement phase. Typically in 40k, you move, you psychic, you shoot, and then you charge and fight. But in the movement phase in kill teams, you actually do your charging in the move phase as well. So you have normal moves and non-normal moves, and that would be like falling back, advancing, and charging. And in kill teams, when you make a charge, if you were to fail the charge, you then can still move that failed distance to the closest model that you charge. So that's pretty interesting. It's a way to gain additional distance. Say that you're hiding out of line of sight and you're 12 inches away from the charging model. You're not going to be able to be overwatched because you can't be seen, and you're just going to roll for the sake of gaining extra movement forward. There's definitely you can definitely get these guys hustling around the board. The scouting phase also has the scouting phase is something that goes down before the mission begins, before the first initiative roll off to see who goes first, before the game starts. There's a scout phase, and there's like 6 options. Each player will secretly choose one of those options, and if you choose the same option, you often have to roll off, and the winner of the roll-off gets to do it, and the other one does not. There's one called Forward Positions, number 5 on the scouting phase options. I think that one's my favorite. 20% of your warband gets to make a move before the game begins, a normal move, can't advance or anything. And I found that highly powerful as far as repositioning, getting yourself in a more forward-moving position to prepare to destroy thy enemy. when you can take, it's rounded up as well. So I think when you get to like 13 models, then you start to be able to average to a 3 model 20% basis. And then your veteran has a tactic that will allow it to also spend 1 command point before the game gets rolling off there, and you can move him as well. So you can get up to like 4 free moves before the game begins with that forward positions. I really like that, and it can play a powerful role. Another, I'm discussing about moving before the initiative phase. They describe in the rule book that you have when the battle round begins and at the end of the battle round. Those moments are actually separate than any phase. Even when it's the beginning of the battle round, it's before the initiative, there's no one's turn yet. When it's the end of the battle round, it's not the end of the fight phase, it's literally a separate moment. That is not a phase at all. And in those times, you are able to use stratagems multiple times because it's not a phase where you can only use it singularly. There's not too many strats that you would use multiple times in these moments, but they do clarify that, which is interesting. Another thing with like tactical reroll, it's a command point tactic or stratagem in the 40k universe. And in 40k, you would think you can reroll any dice. You can reroll the number of shots. Say you do a heavy flamer, d6 shots, you could reroll that d6 if you rolled a 1, but not in kill teams. You have to pay close attention to that tactical reroll is only for very specific things, and typically not the outside the box rolls, right? It is useful for on the injury table though, I will say that. You don't want those models to get killed. So, I'm going all over the place here, but the game is affordable, it's fast playing, it's highly tactical. I honestly, each game I've been very much on the edge of my seat because every moment is a back and forth between the two players. The only time you're really waiting for one opponent to do what they're doing and you're highly focused on what it is they are doing because you're about to react to it is the movement phase. In the beginning of each round, you'll roll 2d6, match up who got the highest. The person that got the highest has the greatest strategic advantage as it's described, and they must go first. There's no choice in this. They simply, sometimes you don't always want to roll the highest. Once again, they incentivize you to desire a low number roll sometimes. Going second can be great for being able to get the optimum positioning on the opponent. So you roll off, so who goes first, you move your entire warband, and then the opponent moves their entire warband. Within that movement phase is also charges, fallbacks, and advances. And just like 40k, when you advance, you get -1 to hit. When you move with a heavy weapon, it's -1 to hit. Just to jump around a little bit here, your warband consists of a minimum of 3 models, a maximum of 20. It's a 100-point warband. Every warband to be battle-forged must have 1 leader specialist, and you can have up to 3 other specialists. Again, there's about 10 different selections. I found myself really being all about comms, which you can choose a model within 6 inches and it'll give it +1 to hit. That's an excellent ability. I like veteran a lot for the not being affected by leadership, the tactic of moving before the game. There's also sniper's really good with reroll 1s to hit. Demo is real good with +1 to wound abilities. Not every faction heavy is really good as well. You can get an additional shot whenever you're making a shot. But they're not all available to every warband. Each warband may not have certain options available to them based on the kind of narrative of that army. For instance, snipers, orcs suck at shooting and they don't have snipers. Go figure. Right? Yeah, they're not good at that. So it seems like each faction has something that they don't actually have access to. So make sure you pay close attention to that. As you're going along. I found the list building to be quite, simple to digest, even though you do got to look kind of closely onto the limitations of how many of each particular model you're allowed to bring. They do a great job of giving you access to the kind of tools that your faction should have, but being careful on balancing and limiting what you're able to take with that. For instance, with the Tau, you can take smart missiles, but only from a DS8 turret that comes with a fire warrior, and then that smart missile that would be game destroying. A smart missile does not require line of sight in typical 40k, but in kill teams, while it doesn't, if you shoot outside of line of sight, you can do it, but you have to roll in 6s and it can't be modified. So I thought that was a good one on them, and you can only bring one of these in your warband, so you're not going to be able to have multiple smart missile systems. Right on, good on them. I found the Harlequins to be insane. They hit a 3d6 charge and they can charge things within up to 18 inches. So where everything else must be within 12 to charge, they break those rules with their special ability and can choose things within 18. So I was having my buddy hide behind terrain outside of line of sight and say, okay, I'll charge everything in 18, and then jumps in there and wrecks. Their multi-damage, their fusion pistols, you know, on the injury table, for whenever you reduce to 0 wounds from a multi-damage weapon, you have to roll however much damage it does worth of dice on the injury table. So again, you're trying to get below a 1 through 3 on that injury roll. Well, if they do 3 damage, now you have to roll 3 dice and hope to get below a 4 on all 3 of those dice. It can get pretty dang tricky and really take them off the battle. You really can feel the force of the power of these weapons. That reminds me of going against Necrons and their special ability, their reanimation protocols. It was really neat to see that in play. You know, we're talking about the injury table. On an injury table for traditionally 1 through 3, you are flesh wound, 4 through 6, you die. But for them, if you roll a 6, then you're reduced back to no flesh wounds and you're totally fine. Where normally that'd be a total death blow. So like, you know, BW's always done a pretty solid job of reanimation protocols, kind of making your joy turn to ash, where you're like, whoa. Like I totally was dropping these wounds down. I was like, all right, get him. He rolls, you see the 6, and I'm like, yeah, oh, he's totally fine. And you know, those rolls can change the course of the game. It can determine defeat, you know, win or loss kind of thing. So great job with the reanimation protocols. I thought it was great. Their leadership 10 plays a huge factor in kill teams. They practically have no concern about morale or being unnerved. So which is what you would expect from the robots. So, you know, they've done a great job from what I've seen so far with the narrative. I love the Orks and their grot shield, even though, like I said, I found it a real challenge to make them successful. I'd love to hear from you on some of the thoughts you have for running Orks. I do love the Commando boss knob, particularly with his 6-inch movement versus a 5-inch movement and his strength 5, extra attacks, the -1 additional to be hit when obscured. I think the Commando is great. I think Orks really, they need the burner boys. I feel like that is a kind of a key to their success. I've been doing a lot of points comparisons between the different factions of how many flamers can one faction bring versus the other, to try to get behind the designers' heads to see if that is the special mechanism to Orks that make them tick. Again, I think the shooting phase is highly important, and they really suck otherwise at that, and the flamers can really help mitigate that, help with the overwatch, etc. So I'm kind of toying with that, you know, the burner boys and whatnot. I made a list of all shootas, all regular boys with the upgrade of a shooter, and you know, points for points, they get stomped by, say, the Tau Pathfinders. Tau Pathfinders for 6 points versus 7 points for a Tau with a shooter is kind of miles better. It has a 5-up armor save versus 6-up armor save. They have a 7-inch move versus a 5-inch move. They both have 18-inch range and 2 shots. They're both assault. Of course, the Tau has marker lights, which can give them reroll 1s, +1 to hit, +1 against obscurity. And they also have supporting fire. So, I mean, they're beasts when it comes to Overwatch. And on top of that, they can take support from nerve checks within 3 inches versus just 2 inches of model. So they just have kind of stacks on stacks of abilities for the same points, if not less. And I'm having a hard time justifying an Ork boy over a Pathfinder. So I'm trying to find Ork's niche. What makes them special? What's going to make somebody be like, I can't deal with that? What's that rock, paper, scissors for them? I'm getting extremely excited for Nova. I'll be participating in 3 of the Nova Kill Team pods, the mini events that will lead up to the Kill Team's finals, top 16 on Sunday. I'm hoping that you can see Warp Charge Gaming, George here in that top 16 on Sundays playing Kill Teams. I'll also be playing my first Shadespire Grand Clash, and then we're going to be participating as Warp Charge Gaming in the Tabletop Olympics at Nova, participating in Age of Sigmar, 40k trios, 40k GT, Shadespire Kill Teams. So really pumped, really pumped. But yeah, it's, you know, the narrative obviously is a huge part of what people are really excited about Kill Teams. I've definitely already experienced the joy of picking out individual infantry models that are kind of the best of the ones that you have, and you know, have the right kind of war gear. It's really fun to glorify these individual infantry pieces that usually get put on the back burner next to those bigger dreadnoughts and larger monstrous models. So really digging the extra excitement I'm having for my individual pieces. Pulling stuff off that's been on the shelf for a long time. I know my buddy Carson playing Necrons was pretty thrilled to be able to pull out his flayed ones who don't get much play for the Necrons. So it's really cool to pull out those extra models that have been sitting on the shelves and give them some glory. I'm really excited about the campaign feature of it and going up through the levels. I think this is best done on a community level. I think it's gonna be really cool to have multiple people become acquainted with each other's characters, their names, and be able to mourn their loss when they die and glorify and cheer when they rise to power. So that's a very exciting thing. I think there's gonna be a lot of sweet campaigns that go down based around it. Again, the cost of entry is so manageable. I think the Kill Teams box set is a huge value, being able to get 2 war bands, plus terrain, plus board, plus tokens, plus rulebook. So definitely, you know, yeah, you can just buy the rulebook, but you get so much when you do that. You can even piece out the individual components and kind of make up your money anyways. So they did a great job with their buying scenario. I've been able to play, you know, the games I've had with the models I have and just with the core rules so far. I'm looking very forward to getting all the additional pieces here shortly. The new terrain is highly received. Everybody's stoked on it. The modular design, being able to build in with the rest of the pieces, is great. Let's do a little bit of a brief summary of how the game's played, okay? So first, you know, you're gonna set up the board, you're gonna deploy, you're gonna do the pre-game scout phase, where each player will choose one of the 6 options. If you choose the same, you roll off, and the player that wins the roll-off gets to do it, the other player doesn't. And that's like booby trapping the terrain, getting a shoot before the game begins, getting free movement, etc. After the scouting phase is over, then you'll roll an initiative. The person that wins the initiative will have the greatest strategic advantage and will get to move first, and then the opponent will move. And then you will get to be the first to act in the shooting phase, and so on. Now, if you do not move, you can ready your model so that it will get the priority to shoot before all other readied models. This is a lot like in combat, where when you charge, charging models go first. In this case, models that did not move and are readied with their weapon, they get to shoot prior to any that have not done so. So if both you and your opponent have readied models, did not move, and are ready to shoot, then it will start with the person whose initiative it is. I think that something I've seen come into play a lot is the universal tactics that everyone has disposal to, decisive strike, decisive shot. But in the shooting phase, the movement phase, and the combat phase, you have the ability to spend 2 command points to be the first to act, whether it's the first to move before whether you went first to, you know, or not, be the first to shoot, whether there's readied models or not, or be the first to fight, whether you charged or not. So that can be critical. And if both players decide to play that at the beginning of the fight phase, the beginning of the shooting phase, then it's a roll-off. Person that wins the roll-off gets to shoot first, person that loses shoots next, and then readied models take place. So you'll see that happen a lot. Command points in Kill Teams is at the beginning of the battle round, before the game begins, pretty much like before the initiative roll off, you're each going to have 2 command points. That's going to give you an ability to do pretty much most of the things at your disposal, just not more than 1 typically, unless you're doing those 1 CP tactics there. And the only reason you get 2 is because the natural leader ability is to give you an extra command point at the beginning of the battle round. So regardless, each battle round you're going to get 1 command point, and as long as your leader's alive, you'll get 2, which is an important tactic there that I think I believe is accurate, is that you really, there's not too much reason to make your leader kind of a Billy Badass running in there and trying to kill everything, because if he dies, it's pretty damn detrimental to lose that extra command point, and you can feel yourself start to be overwhelmed by your opponent. If you're only getting 1 command point a turn and not saving them up, then they're going to be able to do those decisive strikes and react before you're able to do anything. Whether, even if you charged or readied all your models, they can still shoot before you. They can still pay command points and fight before you. And that can really mess you up. So you need your leader alive. So I've been making my leader cheap. With the Orks, I'll make it the Grot or the Gretchen leader. With the Necrons, we did the Necron warrior and just hit him in the back. You know, I feel like spending the least amount on the leader and hiding them is almost a necessity. Now, granted, for the more elite armies, this becomes less of an ability, but it is super important that they stay alive in order to continue to get those CP, at least until mid or in game. So that's came up. Okay, so You know, you ready your models. Those ready models get to shoot first. Whoever has the greatest strategic advantage gets to go with their ready model first, and you go back and forth. Ready model, ready model. Once all ready models are shot, then you, you know, ready, aim, fire. You shoot with the rest of your guys. And the shooting goes back and forth model by model. Whoever's won the initiative roll off, they'll get to shoot first, then the opponent shoots. Shoot, 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 until everybody's shot. And then it'll go into the fight phase. Models that are within 1 inch of each other will be able to activate. Charging models go first. And after all charging models are resolved, then it will go to back and forth between the players, starting with the player whose initiative it is, to complete the fight phase. Again, the charges occurred in the movement phase. So pretty wild and different dynamic. And you don't get to move and then charge. You just literally say in your movement, instead of my normal move, I'm gonna make a charge, you roll 2d6. You get to move that 2d6 distance even if you fail your charge, but you're gonna get overwatched on if you're in line of sight and within range. And if you make it, you make it, and if you don't, you don't. So that is a really fun and cool dynamic. The tactics are very well designed. I feel like they've been very influential in the games, and you definitely have to be focused on using them. And often are having to make a decision like, oh, I want to do that, but I want to do that, and I do love those choices and those tough calls. Each game I've played has been, again, a nail biter, edge of your seat, very close, and any moment the tables can turn kind of feeling. So I think that really spawns a great game. I think they did a fantastic job. This is a great opportunity to play. If you have always wanted to play tabletop miniature games, it's a great different type of way to play. If, you know, to change it up from traditional 40K with a very small learning curve, next to no cost of entry. And I think that it's a more balanced, competitive system right now to be able to really try, you know, do a test of mind and will there and put your strategic prowess to the test. So believe in it. It's a fantastic thing. I could not be more thrilled. You're going to see a lot of coverage coming from us. I can't wait to go to Nova. Hope to see you there. This is my Kill Team's first response here. I can't wait to talk more about the 4-player multiplayers. I can't wait to cover coverage at the local gaming store battlegrounds and begin to do a community campaign. I'm going to do my best to constantly keep you updated and sharing the results and progress of our Kill Team experience here. Death Ray Designs, thank you for the terrain. It's been fantastic for Kill Teams. I think it's a really great set. Before you go crazy on GW terrain, while it is great, you know, and definitely in the universe, don't make sure you look into these other you know, terrain companies out there. Game At EU, Death Ray Design. There's really some fantastic pieces. 3D Horizon is another that makes some great Tyranid pieces, for example. Just you can get some great sets of terrain out there for a affordable price bracket comparatively to, say, GW. Gotta love them, but just make sure you keep your eyes open, and it definitely plays a big factor. And terrain in this game you can fall from, you can jump over gaps. Height matters a lot, climbing versus you know, jumping and things of that nature. They did a great job. So dig in, get those rules, be involved, and I hope to hear from you soon. We can always play Kill Teams on Tabletop Simulator. If you don't have anyone in your area to play with and you'd like to get a game on, I would be happy to stream a game with you on Twitch. So just hit us up, admin@warpchargegaming.com. Speaking of admin at Warp Charge Gaming, that's where you can hit us up to talk to us about commission painting from the illustrious James Schaff, or perhaps you have a wish list that you're looking for. We have the wonderful store Battlegrounds at our disposal as a resource to us and our community, and we can totally hook you up with getting a great deal on some sweet pieces there for whatever type of game system you might play. They have a huge used inventory, constantly more influxing. I do not mind being the hunter for you for these pieces and great deals. Just shoot us an email and I will go to work for you. Hope to see you soon. Take care. Keep taking fun seriously. Cheers.